Good morning, everybody. Sorry, slight technical difficulties. How are you guys today? Today, duh. Um, miss you guys. Can't wait until we get back together. But hopefully today's word is a good, expansion on last week and what I was talking about. So last week I spoke about. I was reading Psalms 23 verse 4, and I spoke about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. So I'm going to read that verse again, and it says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." So I also spoke to, some of the dangers of not walking through it and kind of taking up residence under that shadow. And you may be thinking, or may have thought this week, all right, Brandon, but I'm here. You're talking to me right now, which means that I'm in the valley. I'm living here. We both live here. And you're telling me that I'm not equipped to live here and that I'll die if I stay. And yes, in a way, very naturally, that is what I'm saying. We aren't equipped, to just take up residence here. And that's not what God has for us. And again, very naturally, we're made up of flesh and blood. And your body will die. It's inevitable. So don't get attached. This frame that we have, it's not coming with us. Death will happen because we're here. But my intention is not to talk to you about this frame, this thing. This doesn't matter a whole lot. So I'm not going to talk to you really about that today. I'm going to talk to you more about the spiritual side of this. So he says, I will fear no evil. David says, I will fear no evil. So even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. We've all been afraid. Earlier this week, my daughter, my daughters were having a sleepover in the living room, and they were watching a movie, and after the movie was done, they were watching Aladdin. After the movie was done, Harper decides that she wanted to leave and go sleep in her bed. Smart girl. But Aubrey had set all of this up for them. What she did is she brought our dining room table into the living room, put blankets all over it, set it up. They were sleeping underneath the table. And so movie ends, and Harper says, I don't want to do this. I'm done. I'm going to bed, right, in my bed. And this is the second time, actually, in the week that she had done that. And Aubrey comes in and says she left me, and she's upset. And I said, well, you could still sleep out there. And she's like, no, I don't want to. And I think she was a little bit afraid. And I'll get to what happened after that in a bit. But we've all been there. We've all been afraid. But I want you to think about the time in your life when you were most afraid. And I was thinking about that last night as I laid in bed. For me, and if you really think about it, probably for you as well, it wasn't those times that I was most afraid whenever I had the potential of having loss. That's not for me the time when I had the most fear. Fear is a strong word, as I was thinking about it as well. It wasn't the times where I thought that I could potentially get hurt or something could hurt me. Yeah, maybe I was afraid, but that's not really the time that I had the most fear, right? But the times that, and as I really thought about this, the times that I had the most, we'll say fear, real fear, were the times when I caught a glimpse of, the spiritual warfare that was going on from my life. It was the times when I sat down and really looked at my life and the things that were happening, and the Lord kind of gave me a small glimpse of that. So then it says, then David says, "For you are with me." And in those times of fear, real fear, those times when I caught that glimpse, that's the times whenever I really realized that he was really with me, because I could see him, and I could see how he was fighting for me. I could feel it. It says, and then he says, "Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." Those times when I'm in the valley of the shadow of death, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And in that moment, those moments of fear, it was that rod and staff that comforted me. It was the direction that he gave me. How, look, I've done a lot of dumb stuff, and I went to some pretty dark places, in my life. And he let me see him, and he guided me through it. That rod and that staff that guided me through those times. And because of that, I didn't take residence there. Had I done that, there would have been death. May not have died, but there definitely, I can tell you right now, there would have been death. There would have been death in my home, in this family that I've been blessed to, that God has blessed me to have. There were that would have went into my girls, that would have went into my daughters, and those a very different output could have been had. Would definitely. I mean, those times, my wife and I'm telling you right now, without him, without that, there would have been death to our marriage, right? Had I stayed and took up residence there would have been death. I'm telling you right now that my marriage and that I have this marriage and I have this wife who, again, gets up here and sings his praises on Sunday is because he didn't let me take residence there. He showed me a glimpse of him fighting for me. He made himself. He was there. He was there. And he guided me out, and he guided me through it. And again, my wife and I, our marriage today is goodness. It's different than it was a year ago. It's far different than it was 5 years ago. And that's because he didn't let me dwell in it. He didn't let me dwell in the valley of the shadow of death. So shortly after, if you read Psalms 23, verse 6, David says, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever." So I've been saying you don't take up residence in the valley of the shadow of death, but you dwell with him where he's at. And I'm going to go into it a little bit more. I'm going to go in more. And it's Psalm 91 shortly after. It says, and I'm going to read the whole thing. It says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow, which is the title of today's sermon, in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you. No disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. That is the shadow we dwell in. The shadow of the Almighty. In that, goodness, I mean, I read those two verses. And one is, look, it's encouraging that when we're here and though we walk through this, he's with us. And his rod and staff comfort us. Sure, that's encouraging. But man, Psalm 91, that's where it's at. That is where it's at. Right? Because that's saying, okay, like, this is what's happening while we're here. And this is what he's doing. But man, while we're dwelling with him and under the shadow of his wings, he's covering us. I was telling you about Aubrey, right? So that night after that all had happened and they both went to their bedroom, I was laying in bed next to Jenny, and I was like, I feel bad because she just, she set all this up, and, she just, Harper just continues to bail on her. And so I got up and I said, look, I'm going to go. I'm going to go ask her if she wants me to stay out there with her. And I had work the next day. But I go into her room, and I didn't know this whenever I decided to go in her room, but I went into her room and I said, hey, Aubrey, I said, want to go out there? And when I went in, she was crying. She was sad. And I said, what's wrong? She said, I continue to do this stuff. And, she just leaves. And I said, well, all right, Aubrey, come on, let's go. Get up. I'm going to sleep under that table with you tonight. And we went and we set up a little spot. We both were under there and slept there that night. It was a terrible sleep. It was terrible. I was so tired the next day. It was hot because she had blankets draped over the sides. It was just like a little, it was a tent. But our Father, it's the same way that, he's there, right? He's there if you're with him. And look, that girl is with me. She's with me. And she rests in my embrace. And it's not about, me doing that for her, really. I want her to see, what I hope for is that she can see, this example of who our Father is through me. Right. And and I hope that's something that she one day sees, because that's important, right? It's important for her and us all, really, to understand how our Father will wrap us up, how our Father will protect us. And look, whenever we went out there, you know this. A lot of you all were kids. A lot of you have kids. Your child really just kind of hangs on you, and they hang on your embrace. And it's something that while they may not recognize it at such a young age, whenever they get older, they see. I still see that with my parents, and when I look back, how I did that, right? And it's something that I consider whenever I think about how our Father really wraps us up and protects us and comforts us. The confidence that I have because of what my Father has done for me, and the things that I can do is because I'm in that. Because I try to keep myself dwelling with him in his house. And that is so important, right? That's where you want to be. You want to be in the shadow of the Almighty. With that, I'm telling you, you can get through anything. That is what got Jen and I through so much. That's what has, I believe, honestly, that's why I believe that, my girls are the way they are, right? And they really are wonderful, wonderful little girls. I know I get this platform and I talk about them all the time, but they really are. And I believe that's because, as a parent, as a leader, I've decided to dwell with the Almighty. So how do you do that? What does that look like? Well, for me, look, we could get into a whole sermon about that, and maybe we will. But, it's with my wife, it's considering her, really, really thinking about her, but putting God first. Really, really putting God first. And staying close to him. Just like, if my children want to know, what to expect from me, or what I need from them and what I expect from them, or my children need to have that protection or whatever that is, what that means is they got to be close. Be close. And in that, I can wrap them up and I can protect them. I can comfort them. I can shelter them. I can teach them. I can help them progress and move forward. And that's what our Father does when we're close to him, when we read his word, when we talk to him, when we pray, when we, how we interact with other people. Are we reflecting, who he is and who he's been to us? And that's how we stay close to him. It's taking the thoughts captive, right, that we have in our day, that whenever we, start to step out of our house, step out of that house, that we turn around and walk back in the front door, that we don't allow ourselves to go in the other shadow. And I was thinking about it as well, right? So this shadow of the Almighty, there is progression in that. You can move forward in that, right? You don't have that when you step outside of that shadow. When you step outside of that and you're in the shadow of the valley of the shadow of death. When you're there, there's no progression. It stops. That's what happened. That's what's happened, what I've seen happen in my own personal life, that when I'm out there, that everything comes to a halt. When I allow something to come in my house that shouldn't be in my house, my home, the progression in my house stops. When I allow something to come in to my marriage and that changes the spirit of it, the progression stops. When I allow something to come into my heart or into our body, I can see progression stop. And that happens when I step outside. So you take those thoughts captive, you take those things captive, and think about every single moment that you have in your life, and you turn around whenever you get out there, and you walk through it, and you get back inside, get back under the covering, get back in his shadow. Because that's where we're supposed to be. In that, we're equipped. In that, we have confidence. In that, we can progress and we can move the word forward. But you can't do that if you're out dwelling in that valley. You can only do that with him because he will equip you. So I want you to really consider that today. You know, when you find yourself in the valley of the shadow of death, when you find yourself in the world, turn around. Run back to dad. Just like when my kids find themselves too far from me and they're not equipped for whatever may be coming, that they turn around and run back to me. That's what it should look like. That you turn around, you run back to your Father, and you get in his embrace, and you're under the shadow of his wings. And that is, you know, the word that I want to give today. That's the encouragement I want to give today. That he's there, that he's always there, and you know, no matter where you're at today, no matter what you're going through today, you can do that. You can turn around. You know, if you find yourself outside of his embrace, in the shadow of his wings, to turn around. Run back. His arms are out. Open wide. Waiting for you to come back. And you'll start to see things change in your life. You'll start to see your home get fixed. You'll start to see marriages get healed. You'll start to see, you know, prosperity in your finances. You'll start to see bad relationships fall off and good ones thrive. You'll start to see your heart towards your ministry and in the work grow when you do that. You'll start to see your Father teach you some new things that you didn't think you might ever be able to do. And that's progression, and that's there's progress, and that's something that you need as we need as people, right? We need to progress. It's whenever we don't progress that we start to just wander. So I encourage you, whatever that is, wherever you're at, that if you find yourself outside of, his shadow, to run back and or find it, right? Maybe you don't know what that looks like. Maybe you don't know if you, I don't know, wherever you're at, maybe you haven't been there before. But we have a Father who is waiting for you with arms open wide. And, I think, I would encourage you, if you're not there, to just reach out to him and watch him pull you in like a good father. I thank you guys for joining me today, hearing the word, and I hope that you all have a wonderful week. I hope you all have a wonderful week under the shadow of the Almighty. And again, I'm excited to see you guys. I miss you all terribly. I think whenever when we come out of this, instead of having service, maybe we'll throw a party. I was thinking about that this week. Want to just have a celebration with you guys where we can fellowship, where we can talk. So I want you all to start thinking about different things that we can do and how we can make that time, amazing for each other, an amazing time of fellowship, amazing for our children who, I know that they're really having a hard time right now. They're, I'm sure anybody with children knows that they're all kind of going stir crazy. So I think, having their friends back and, being able to fellowship and spend some time with them would be awesome as well. So I'm excited for it. Start thinking about it. Hopefully it's happening soon. Just continue to, pray over this and, pray for our leaders and that God would give them wisdom and how to really move out of this and get things back. I love you all. See you next week.